Hi everyone, welcome back to another SimplePlanes video. This video is part 2 of my How to Make Custom Fuselage Wings in SimplePlanes series, which I had to split into 2 parts because of the length. I hope you enjoy and learn something, and let's get started. So now, the first step, adding a control surface. Well, actually, first of all, I finish it, because we want to obviously get rid of this end here. Now, on the SWL-120's main wings, I obviously have that little winglet, but horizontal stabilizers, especially the tail itself, do not have that. Instead, we're going to just round it off. We are going to have to redo the trailing edge piece that we just did. We're going to have to redo the rise and run and width, well, not really width, but rise and run. We're going to have to redo them all the time for every single section that we're going to add. Because we're not evenly tapering it off, like if you're just adding a section to it, then we'd be tapering it off at the same amount. But since this is the ends of the wing, it's not going to be tapering off the same way. The first thing I want to start with for this is a smaller section, like about that. Not that much rise. So we're going to start with this, and then I'll just add a few more sections until it's tapered off. So after some time, I've come up with the front part of the tip. However, that has had some problems with me trying to make the back of the tip because of how the height makes the width of the trailing edge, and therefore instead of just going out to here like I was hoping for, it instead has to go in and then does some weird stuff, then I don't know, comes out or something, which is not ideal. I'd say for beginners, just ignore this tip of it, because this is going on the SWL-120. I will put this tip in, but I just say ignore if you're just learning. I focus more on the control surfaces and the actual wing, not so much the tip. Also, another important bit which I almost forgot, make sure to turn smoothing on, because you can see as I'm turning it on, it makes everything well smooth. Now, for the actual control surfaces, for a main wing, this will actually be flaps, and I guess there will be the aileron, but in the main wing it will be primarily flaps, which is the most difficult bit. Flaps and spoilers too. Now I may make a video on how to do that, but in this video I'm going to focus mainly on just making a control surface. However, for basic flaps, it's sort of simple to make flaps, and actually I'll show you how you can easily add flaps to this wing after I make a control surface. So first, if you want to figure out exactly where you want to put your control surface. For me, I want to put mine the entire length of this main segment, because it still has the tip to have some space, and according to my blueprints I'm looking at, it pretty much just goes right to the base of the tail. Really the base of the horizontal stabilizers. What we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this top bit, and I'm going to slice out about 30%, well actually I think 31% of the leading edge. And then for the actual bit that's still on the tail, we're going to leave that there just for actually we don't need it now. I'm going to remove its connection, that way we don't affect the base airfoil. Then we're going to slice out 69% of the trailing edge, which means our fill should actually be 31%. And then since this bit is actually staying on the tail, we're going to re-add its connection, then we have this bit. These two show the exact same coordinates, so if I were to select this one, copy its position, paste that position in the other bit, you can see that it perfectly matches up, so you wouldn't even tell this is actually two pieces. Now going to nudge that out. I'm going to do the same with the bottom. Now, one thing for a semi-symmetrical airfoil we will have to do, really it's safe to do for any airfoil, is before we slice out the bottom bit, we're going to first make the leading edge of the actual control surface. Not the leading edge of the wing, but for the control surface, because the control surface is pretty much an airfoil in itself. So it's sort of like a wing within a wing, if you can understand that. I'm going to start with the leading edge of the actual wing. I'm going to make its position be the same as the other part of the control surface. I'm also going to get a copy of the, I'm just going to use the piece itself, not a copy of it. And I'm going to start with the base. Actually, I'll do the tip. So what we do is I'm going to go into orthographic side view. And for control surfaces, now we could actually use the 5-part airfoil technique for the control surface too. However, for simplicity, and because it's what I've done in the past with the original wings, I'm going to leave it as 3 parts. Because you're not going to have a control surface within a control surface, right? Actually, we could technically use the 3 parts airfoil technique for this wing as well. However, my 5-part airfoil technique is better, because it gives us 2 flat pieces to work with for control surfaces, instead of having to figure out how to cut out the control surfaces from the 3 parts airfoil. So we're going to make the right fill be 65, I think it's used in the other. I think 63 will work. That way just have more of a round, because it doesn't just be at the front 50% and then just immediately angles down in the trailing edge. 63 and 63. Then, since we're an orthographic side view, we want to try and align this corner with this corner here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to nudge it up so it looks like the control surface bits are roughly halfway inside it, really roughly in the middle. Then we're going to decrease the height. We're going to deal with the width later because we want the width to be exactly twice as much as the height. And now I've done the height, I can change the width. And then we can nudge this back in place. And I'm pretty sure what we can do with the lower section of the airfoil is, because they're the same because it's a symmetrical airfoil, we can simply just make its fill be exactly 69%, and that will be perfect. Just like with the top, we can just make the copy's position be the same as the existing one's position, like that, and then nudge it back. And yep, like I thought, since this is a symmetrical airfoil, 69% is exactly the right percentage for the top and bottom. The reason it's not the same for a symmetrical airfoil is because, like I was showing you before, except it's still different, with a symmetrical airfoil, the width of the top middle piece is not the same as the width of the bottom middle piece. So basically, these 2 trailing edge pieces, the bottom one is longer, like the width of it is longer than the top one. I just want to make sure that how it's connected. We don't want to have any floating bits without a connection, because what will happen, let's say I have this bit here, if I were to adjust the run, actually this isn't connected either, I just want to connect it by the tip, because that's what we've just finished. So the run of this is adjusted from the tip, not including the tip, that way the tip stays in place. But also, you can see this piece with no connections does not move at all, which could mean it will easily become out of place if this was an important part where we had fine-tuned into place. So we've done the tip, now we're going to do the base. Because of how orthographic side view works, we want to avoid clipping, so we're going to have to nudge all the parts to the other side of the map. Not really map, but the other side of the designer. That way there should be no clipping, and there's no clipping. Okay. Now we are going to adjust this. We're going to start with the rise. So actually, first you want to make sure the run is correct. So I just use a bit of rise to get it into place. Then I can adjust the run until it is perfect. This will take, again, more fine-tuning. Then I can adjust the rise until the trailing edge of the airfoil is exactly in the middle of the leading edge. And then I can change the height of the leading edge, similar to how I did the tip. Actually, I seem to have got it perfect without much effort. Now I can just change the width to be exactly twice as much as the height. Then I can use the run to nudge back into place. And done. So that is our airfoil. So now we can just cut out a percentage of the bottom part of the trailing edge, 69%. Well, actually that would mean it's 31%, so fill percentage is 31%. And then we can add its connection back. And now what I can also do is remove all the connections from the airfoil's parts, and then we add them to the leading edge. So that way I can use the leading edge to move all of the parts in the airfoil. Then I can nudge it back into place. Now having this control surface is great, but what makes it rotate? Well, we need to add a rotator. And also, the thing with having the fill percentages as they are, making the control surface perfectly flush with the wing so there's no gaps or seams, so it's completely seamless. That does have an issue where if we rotate the control surface, part of it will clip through a bit of the wing, and because of that we need to actually cut out part of the wing right in front of the control surface. To take this bit, I'm just going to move its connections again, and then what we need to do is cut out a bit, I think fully 24%, so for that, it just needs to be enough so when the control surface is fully deflected, say up, it just is about to start clipping with this highlighted piece there. So with flaps, we don't need to cut out the top bit, we just need to do the bottom bit. However, for control surfaces that rotate both ways, we need to cut out both sides. So I'm going to start with having the fill percentage of the bits in front of the control surface to be 24%. Actually, I can just overload that, so instead of playing around with the connections, I can just make it be 24%. So now we're going to add a rotator. I'm going to use a hinge rotator. It's going to add a bunch of parameters to it. I'm going to make this be pitch. In joint rotator, I'm going to just make this 45. Now, some of these values I can adjust in the settings, but I just prefer to do this all at one go and overload. This is actually going to be 0.7. I'm also going to disable the base mesh. This just disables some decorative 3D mesh on the rotator. We're going to set this to true. You can see it no longer has the mesh around it. And actually, for our purposes, we do want this to be on, so I'm just going to get rid of that. Now I just need to nudge it about in place. So, and actually, now that we're done using orthographic view, we can nudge all the parts back together. I'm just going to finish adding this rotator. So I want to nudge it to be just, and actually I'll make it be the same position as the leading edge, so same height and the same z-axis and the same, what is it, length? I guess it is length anyway. So now it's in there. I'm also going to just quickly add some connections, so I'm going to connect it to, I'll say the middle piece, and I can also move the connection of the leading edge to the wing and make the leading edge actually connect to the rotator. And I'm just going to make all of the locations of all the different parts the same, so all the parts aren't spread out. Now I have a rotator, and without changing anything, let's see how it runs. So you can see already this is not the behavior we want. We need to rotate the rotator on, I think, all 3 axes, well actually just 2 axes, to avoid this weird behavior where the control surface does not rotate how we want it to. And also, a bonus on the first try is it does deflect the way we want it to. So let's say I want the plane to pitch up. The expected behavior is the control surface deflects up. And that does happen here, so I don't need to change that simple invert. We do need to fix the rotation axis. We want the rotation axis to be the same as the imaginary axis that the leading edge follows. But we're getting there. So far I've made a wing, a basic control surface to go with the wing. I've also decided to attempt to make the edge. But I think for beginners we should focus on the middle part of the spring, which is really the main part of the wing, and control surfaces. So let's fix that axis. We want to scale up the rotator. We'll just try some values. We don't want it to be that. Actually that can be 0.1. Let's try this one. That's what we want. So let's make this one actually be more like 20. Right, so this is our axis. I'm also going to quickly just paint the leading edge red so we know exactly what we're rotating it to. There are 2 parts you want to rotate. First you want to rotate it. I'm just going to quickly try that now. You want to rotate it so the Z rotation is as close as we can get it to the same axis as the rise of the wing. I'm just going to fine tune that. We're going to use small and small rotation amounts as we zoom in. I want to try and get it as close as we can. About that. And actually let's see how it lands in the level. It doesn't look much different. Actually I can't tell any difference. But that one step has done part of it, that's part of the step. But it's mainly fixing the other axis, which is to make this edge be about here somewhere. So go to the top view, select the rotator, and we're going to use the y-axis. The x-axis is not an axis we need to tamper with. We're going to use the y-axis and z-axis. Let's try that. I don't think that's 100% done. Let's just see how it went. Much better. Does need a little bit more fine tuning, but yeah, this is much closer to the axis we want it to rotate on. And actually, what we really need to do is actually just move the rotator forward a bit. But we do need to change its rotation axis a bit. I think we need to move this end back this a bit. I'm also going to move it forward a bit. Much better. We do need to fix that clipping there, so we need to move the rotator forward even more. It's still not perfect. You can see at the base it's exactly how I was looking for, but on the tip there was quite a big gap. Just needs more fine tuning. Yeah, I've got pretty much a control surface. Gonna go and keep fine tuning that.
A few minutes later.
And after a lot of trial and error, and now this. It could probably be improved a little bit more, but I think it's good enough. I just need to, I guess I could just do a little bit of clipping. Yeah, the bottom needs to be fixed a bit. And also, I want to explain how we're going to cap off these ends so it doesn't just look like a hollow piece. And also how we can add some more parts to make it look even more detailed. So 22%. So I'm going to do 22% on the bottom as well. I can also make this not red. And we can also, I'm just going to paint this completely white as well. So in this rotator, we can now make this 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, and then disable the base mesh in the joint rotator category. I don't think the rotator will be showing its mesh because it's so small, but either way I just want to have it disabled. Doesn't really matter, I just want to have it disabled. So you can see it's right in there. And there we go. What I will do to make it a little more realistic is first I'll make its range actually more like 35. And also add another category called damper multiplier. I'll set this to 10,000. I think 1,000 will actually be better for the damper multiplier, but we'll see. Yeah, I think 1,000 will be better for damper multiplier, so I'll just set 1,000 for that. Yeah, this looks much better. So actually, I'll set something like 3,000, not 1,000. Yeah, much better. So there we go. It's not done yet. Like the control surface is sort of done, but we just need to add some more parts to it. So we're going to sort of like cap off both ends of the control surface. We're also going to add a small part which really just sort of walls off the hollow bit of the wing in front of the control surface. The caps are relatively easy. We're going to start by getting, I think I'll take this piece. We're going to rotate it so it's actually lengthways with the actual fuselage. I'm just going to take off the visor man. We want the width, so actually we want the fill. I'm just going to set the fill. So we want all these fills to be 100% for now. The width we're going to make as thin as possible. I'm just going to set the height to 1 for now. The width is going to be 0.01. Then I'm also going to use my trick to make it even thinner, which is to take off. I think I'll. This is the wrong way. So the left fill should take off the left side. Right. I'm going to take off 90% of the left fill, making it 10%. Same for the front. I'm also going to roughly scale it down to what I think it's going to be. So 1.1. Front height can be, I think, 1, 0. So you want something like this. We're going to, of course, change the look of this again. Basically, I just want to have this, and we also want to make sure there's no other rotation. Basically, a blank flat piece of fuselage like this. Now we're going to nudge into place. And before we add this piece to the airfoil, or the control surface airfoil, we also want to cap off the leading edge of that control surface. Now we could use this piece and keep adding a few more segments, but there's an even better way to do this. We're just going to go into overload after selecting this leading edge. Then we're going to change the part type to be fuselage body 1. And then it will be filled in fuselage and not being hollow. We also fix the connections because it'll erase all the connections. And done. So now I can focus on this triangle piece. I want to first nudge out to the right position. So about there. Then I'm going to nudge it back until the front part, or the front edge, is in line with the back edge of the leading edge. About that. And then I'm going to make the Y position so it's just in the middle. It doesn't have to be exactly right, because even though we still want to be relatively fine-tuned, there's still the slight edge of the two rear parts of the airfoil, these two pieces here. So even though they're meant to be thin, they still have some thickness. So there's some room for error. So I want the height to be something like not 1.1 or something, 1.4 for now. And we can nudge it up, then fine tune it again. This is good enough. You can see there's still some slight difference between the height of the front part of this cap or end and the actual part of this airfoil here. But since there's some thickness here, it doesn't really matter. Now we're going to add a connection. We're going to add the front connection of this end to, I'm going to say, the leading edge of the airfoil. And then we're going to change the length, and also going to use rise. The length will again need some fine tuning. I think we don't actually need to use rise, because this is a symmetrical airfoil. So there we go. So that's the right end of the airfoil. It also needs to do the base. The base is the same idea as the end, so I'm going to do that off camera.
11 minutes later.
And done. So that's the airfoil side of... Where did that go? Oh, I forgot to nudge it up. Anyway, so that is the control surface side of finishing up done. Now I need to cap off, I think I'm just going to call it the inside of the airfoil from the outside. The way we're going to do this is first we're going to nudge, I guess we can nudge that up. We want to create an extra bit of cap, which is in here. But wait, first we're going to just make this part of the cap. So we're going to duplicate the leading edge of the control surface. We're going to make it back into hollow. I'm going to start by making it the same position as the actual leading edge. And then we're going to nudge it forward until the back part of the new leading edge, which isn't actually the leading edge, is in line with the back part of the wing itself. Then we can adjust the height. This will again take some trial and error until it is flush. We're going to have to modify the base. I'll just do that just a sec. And we can also actually take off part of the width of the end of it, so the tip, because we don't actually need all of that. So like this, I can nudge it back, like that. Hopefully you can see what I mean. I also need to do the base, so I'm going to add a connection of the tip to, say, this part. Then I'm going to go to the base, and now I can use run. So first I'm just going to the base. I'm going to get rid of some of this width. Then I'm going to use run to adjust it there somewhere. Then we can increase the height a bit, and then we can change the run again. And just about done. Now I also need to cap off. Actually, I don't think we need to cap off anything. Now I do need to add an extra cap for this part, which isn't actually there yet. And we also need to cap off some other stuff. So let's just see how this runs in the level, like how the control surface rotates. It shouldn't clip with anything. That's pretty good. So now I can move on from the capping off the airfoil, the control surface's airfoil, to the main wing. So see this bit here? So instead of this being hollow, we want to cap it off, similar to what we did in the base. One thing I also need to do is finish off this tip. I haven't done it because it's a little advanced. Like, not advanced, but it just takes a lot of trial and error. Because the height of each piece determines the width of the two back panels. So I'm just going to do a lot of trial and error.
Many minutes later.
And complete. So now we're going to work on those actual caps. So what we're going to do is first going to nudge up some of the other parts. Then we're going to duplicate this end piece. We're going to make the positions identical. Then we're going to nudge the new piece up. We're going to set its back connection point to be, I don't know, anything. It can be anything. I'm going to say there. And then what we're going to do is we're also going to get out this piece. And then we want to just extend this cap to be past the front bit of this other, There's probably names for all of this. Basically, we want this piece, the front of this piece, like this, to be past this piece. Then we can just adjust the height a bit. For a semi-symmetrical wing, this method will also work the same way. You just need to use vise because it's a semi-symmetrical wing, so it's, as you've seen in some diagrams, not symmetrical. This bit is actually relatively straightforward. So we just have this piece, and that's already done. Then we can do the exact same thing for the other end. Going to nudge up these two bases. Going to duplicate the other cap. Set its position to be the same. Set its back connection point to be anything. I'm just going to put it to here for now. And then set its length to be past the middle cap, about there somewhere. And then we can use height to finish it off. And that is basically done. So now we've finished the basic wing, but there's also some more stuff we can do, such as adding details. One of the easiest details is to add rivets, and since this is a horizontal stabilizer, there's not much else we can add. Like for example, on the SWR120's main wings, we have all obviously the wing details, for example all these spoilers. Actually, let's load the levels and I'll show you. So when we get the flaps extended and out of the way, we extend the spoilers, you can see there's all these details, there's the, I can't remember what these are called, they have a name. On the flaps we have these flap track fairings, we have some of the slot details, but this is all details for the main wing. The only detail we can really add to the horizontal stabilizer, the tail, is some rivets. To speed things up a bit, I'm going to just copy some of the rivets from this plane. I'll get this line. It's pretty simple to make rivets. You just get a label part, and then you put in a bunch of dots or spaces, and then that's your line of rivets. You can see label, pretty simple. Just a bunch of dots and little bit spaces. And then you just... I'm just gonna figure out where I'm gonna put them. I'm just gonna put the main lines here. And this bit, actually the whole thing's optional I guess, but the rivets are not really required for functionality, they're just like an extra detail we can add. I'm going to add them. So you just have your line of dots, and you will have to adjust the actual length. And I'm going to say I want one at the front, one in the middle, and one at the back. So I'm going to put this at the front, about there somewhere. And similar to the rotator, where we rotated that on 2 axes, we're going to do the same with the line of rivets. You also can use a 3rd axis actually because of the shape of the airfoil, this one, and that is the first line of rivets. And it's the same idea for the middle and the back, just a bit of trial and error, and adding and moving dots as required. And the rivets are added. And for this wing, that's all the details I'm actually going to add to it. So now what we can do is mirror it to the other side. To do this, without breaking anything, we're going to first nudge it out from the fuselage. I'm just going to nudge down the other bits, just the one. And then with it away from all the other parts, then we can select the root part that I've connected everything to, and then I can just mirror it. Now of course all the connections are going to be messed up on this piece, so I'm just going to go into here and delete them all for all these pieces. And with all the connections removed, I can now go ahead and add them, but correctly. And that's all done. And now the horizontal stabilizers are complete. That will be it for this video. I might do the tail on a separate video, but I might just do it off camera, I don't know. So if you enjoyed, make sure to like, comment and subscribe, hopefully learn something from this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!